Morning,
Jessica.
everyone. Well, I guess good afternoon, technically. Um, Thanks for hopping on and joining us today. We'll go ahead and get started. We probably will have a few others just jump on as we go. Um,
Go back
so
walking.
welcome. Huh?
I see 25, 30 of them.
Oh,
Wow. They'll stay together.
okay. Um,
Now back to our
so
regular
yeah, so
scheduled
welcome
programming.
back to our regular scheduled programming. Welcome to our 2026 winter webinar. The focus of this webinar is going to be just discussing food waste. We're going to go ahead and I want to take a minute to thank our silver sponsor for this webinar, which is Scrap Dogs Composting. So we're grateful for their support to kind of help cover costs of this so we didn't have to charge. So thank you, Scrap Dogs Composting, for supporting us. I believe they're on the call with us today. I think I see Davis Saltonstall here. Um, so thank you. Our agenda today, we're just going to kind of start with the Food Recovery Council, which is a program we're trying to start here through a grant that we got, and our executive director, Vic, will discuss that. Um, and then maybe we'll start there and then we'll go to next. So Vic, you ready?
Sure thing. Thanks, Jessica. Um, as Jessica mentioned, we
Sure.
applied for a waste diversion grant to set up a food recovery council, commonly trying to be called the FRC. It's open to everyone, towns, businesses, residents, food pantries. So we're hoping to get some farm people in there, educational institutions, and all that sort of stuff. Jessica, do you want me to put my slides up there, or do you want to? I could just share my screen real
Either
quick.
way, I can put it up, but if you have it, you can go ahead and share.
Okay, let me do the screen share real quick. All right, hopefully you can see that. Um,
Yep.
so I'm probably not going to talk about all this stuff because we don't want to be here all day. But what the FRC is, it's a group of like-minded individuals that are trying to stop food from being wasted and follow the food hierarchy and hopefully compost when necessary and dispose of at the very um, last thing. Where we are, we're still in the planning stages. We haven't decided on how to do a membership structure if we need one or to have a group of officers, but we could see some of this stuff happening. And then as the people decide what we want to do, maybe we could do some programming to coincide with like our annual conference and some other events. So that's also where we want to be. Who we are, like I said, like-minded individuals trying to save food. Uh, this council will, I guess boy, I talk really fast. I said pretty much everything that's on the slides already. So, um, we want to do this, creating a network. We have a listserv set up, but we don't have a lot of people on there yet. And one of the goals could possibly be to, say someone has a bunch of food that's getting close to being too late to use. They'll say, hey, I've got like 500 pounds of potatoes. Who could use this? And then maybe someone, either a farmer or someone that's doing an event, could say, I'll take that. Just another way to keep it out of the trash. And then we'll hopefully meet. I'm thinking probably every quarter once we get going. So, people don't like to be just inundated with too many meetings. How you get involved, you could reach out to either myself or my intern, mrrafrc@mra.net, and they can talk about how to get involved more. Ash, she teaching these students about food waste, involving students in composting, just another idea. Here's just some of the stuff we don't want in and what we do want in. You could put some meat in, pet waste, keep that out. We're working on a compost that I'm looking for someone to try it to see if we can compost pet waste in our earth machine. So that's still in the planning stages. And the main motto, food too good to waste. Thanking you. And I also want to say our mission, prevention and recovery, building the network, and community engagement and education. And one thing we're also doing is we're starting the Maine Master Community Compost course with Mark King and the Maine DEP. And like I said, one other time, probably, or 100 times, the course is free. There's going to be 5 segments, webinars. You can watch them free many times as you want. If you want to be certified to possibly go out and train others to do composting, or maybe set up your own outfit, we will offer a test and a certificate, maybe a few little trinkets at the end of it. So to have the certificate, just remember you can't just go out and set up a compost site any way you want. You still have to go through the DEP process of permitting and all that sort of stuff. But we're pretty excited about that. It's going to be the first one on January 29 from 10 to 11. And then we'll do on the 26th of February, March 26th. And I believe number 4 will be at the conference. And we're going to broadcast it for those that don't go to the conference on the 14th. That's on 100%. It's like 98%. Monday would be the other option. And then we're going to do a 5th one where Ash and Mark and I are going to go out and visit a site, do some troubleshooting, kind of like show you a hands-on. We're afraid that some folks that are from really far away, they might not be able to make that date. So we're going to film that, and that'll be available too, along with all the other ones. And we'll have that set up on YouTube once we get this all figured out. And I think that's all I have. And I want to thank you for coming today.
Vic, back to the FRC. Vanessa asked, when is the next FRC meeting?
We have top people working on it. I think we'll probably meet sometime in February after we get that first webinar out of the way and see what the folks want to do. You know, if we can get some more interest, I'd love to have anyone that's on here today reach out and say, hey, I want to be part of this. So we're looking at February.
Do we happen to have any published resources yet from different educators? Or is that still in the works?
I don't have the list in my head, but I know there's some folks from the University of Maine system. There might be another college that was at our meeting in September. So there is interest. We got to figure out where we're going. Any other questions? Are we ready to move on? Excellent. Jessica, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Vic, for taking a moment to talk to us about the FRC and then also the Maine Community Composter course, which are 2 separate things. And again, if you have questions about either of those, you can contact Vic or Ash, who is the intern helping Vic with this project. All right. Thank you, Vic. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
Sure, I guess.
Next on the agenda is we're going to hear about LD 1065, which was a bill that was passed recently, and Nora Bosworth and Peter Blair are going to go ahead and talk to us about that. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to them. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us. Nora, I think you're going to kick us off.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm just working on sharing my screen. I've become increasingly Zoom incompetent as time progresses. Share, and I'm going to screen 2. Okay. Does that look like a presentation? Yes. Okay. Hi,
It certainly
everyone.
does. Yes.
Yay. Killing it already. My name is Nora Bosworth. I am an attorney with Conservation Law Foundation, and I am presenting alongside Peter Blair, who is the policy director of Just Zero. And we are going to discuss Maine's food waste reduction law, which came into being through LD 1065. And the order of our presentation today is as follows. So Peter is going to give an overview of food waste reduction laws across the country. And then he's going to go into the multiple environmental and social benefits of these laws. And then it will be back over to me to go into the nuts and bolts of how Maine's law will actually operate. And then I will briefly cover a few implementation challenges we can expect and lessons learned from the many other states that have done this. And then hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for Q&A. One moment. So I work for the Conservation Law Foundation, and for those of you who don't know, CLF is an environmental legal nonprofit whose mission is to conserve natural resources, protect public health, and build healthy communities in Maine and across New England. We have dozens of attorneys and policy experts who work to this end, and we have an office and deep roots in each state in New England, although the majority of our organization sits in Boston. I do not. I live in Cumberland, Maine, and I go into Portland regularly for work and for my kids' school. And within CLF, I work under the Environmental Justice Program. Our program has 3 teams, which you can see here. We have the Communities and Toxics team, Transportation and Justice, and then our comms team. And I work for the Communities and Toxics team. We work with communities that are already overly burdened by pollution to fight for the right to live free from toxic exposures. And waste is a huge part of this work, and therefore legislation that can help tackle the waste crisis, like LD 1065, is also part of this work. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton to Peter, and he'll get us started. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Nora. I'm also not the best with Zoom, so hopefully it works as I navigate with what you just did. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes. Looks good.
All right, great. Okay, so thanks so much, Nora. As Nora said, I'm going to kind of go through some of the background information, explain why we're seeing an interest in addressing food waste, what other states are doing, and then kind of the impact those laws have had, which teased Nora up to kind of talk about the campaign we had in Maine to pass LD 1065 and the impact it's going to have. So first, some of you are probably not familiar with us. As Nora said, my name is Peter Blair. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director with Just Zero. We are a national environmental advocacy organization. We're relatively new. We were founded in 2022. We work holistically on waste issues across the country. We're trying to address the environmental, economic, and social injustices that are inherent in a lot of our outdated waste management practices. Most of our team have been working on waste issues for quite some time. I actually worked at CLF for a bit out at the main office, and we all noticed that there was a vacuum. There wasn't a national organization that was really thinking about waste, and we decided rather than wait for someone to fill that vacuum, we would step up and fill it ourselves. And we've been rocking ever since. So going into food waste reduction and recycling laws, first, what is driving policy change? Why are so many states thinking about food waste now? There's really a couple of reasons. The first is just economics. It is no longer cheap and affordable to just throw things away. Landfill tipping fees across the country are increasing. In the Northeast, this is especially true. We have the highest landfill tipping fees in the country. Maine is one of the highest in 2024, which is the year we have the most recent data from. The annual average landfill tipping fee was around $110. So it's no longer just we can throw things out and not think about it. There's a huge cost associated with this. The second is climate goals. Food waste is a big climate burden. Climate change poses an existential threat to our existence. States are trying to address this, and there's an increasing emphasis on the role food waste has. In Maine, the amount of food waste that's generated annually pretty much equates to the driving of around 400,000 cars for 1 year. And this research actually comes from the Maine DEP, who funded a study to evaluate food waste using climate funds. So there's a focus on really connecting these two, and states see that to address their climate goals, they really need to think about food waste. Next, waste diversion goals. In the 80s and 90s, there was this emphasis of states passing these really aggressive, optimistic waste diversion goals. Maine set a goal of recycling or diverting 50% of all the solid waste in the state. Maine's not an outlier. None of the states have hit their goals. One of the reasons is that they've really only thought about this through traditional recycling lenses. Let's focus on paper, cardboard, glass, aluminum. Food waste was kind of an afterthought, but there's been an increasing attention to the fact that food waste is a huge part of the waste stream. It's something that should be prioritized for diversion. And then finally, hunger. Things are not great right now. The cost of living is extremely high. Grocery prices are really exorbitant, and there's a lot of food insecurity in this country. In Maine, it's estimated that about 170,000 Mainers are considered food insecure, which means they do not have consistent access to adequate food sources. Food insecurity can affect everyone. It does affect everyone, but it's particularly problematic with children. In Maine, it's estimated that 1 out of every 5 children are considered food insecure. So it's really hard for states to square the fact that they're wasting so much food while having populations that are hungry and vulnerable. So these are what's kind of driving the changes. And the change we're seeing largely are states passing these really comprehensive frameworks to rethink about their relationship with food waste. This doesn't include Maine on the list, but these are the 10 states that have passed similar laws. And what they're trying to do is really focus on how do we address food waste holistically? How do we make sure that we're reducing food waste, increasing food that is donated so it's going to people in need, and recycling through composting or anaerobic digestion, everything else. And the way these laws typically work is they set a threshold either based on the amount of waste that's generated a week, the amount of food waste in either tons or cubic yards. Most of the states are looking at really big generators, people that are generating 2 tons, 1 ton of food waste per week. These are hospitals, schools, prisons, university, really large institutions. And they say, okay, you can no longer send your food waste to landfills. Instead, you're going to have to reduce the amount of food waste you generate, donate the excess edible food you have to food banks and other organizations, and then recycle the rest. A lot of the states take an extra approach where they set a radius requirement, and they only make this apply to those really big generators that happen to be located near organic recycling facilities, composters, or anaerobic digesters. You see that with the states that have the 20, 30, 25-mile radiuses. There was a big push for these laws starting in around 2011. That's when Connecticut passed the first one. They were followed by California, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island shortly after. Then there was a bit of a pause, but really in 2020, we saw a renewed push, and we've seen increased attention to food waste and these types of laws ever since. And these laws have been super impactful. We have enough data because a lot of these laws have existed for a while to see that they do work. So they are making sure that there is more food for people and not just landfills. In New York, their program, which does have a very large emphasis on donation, they've seen 32 million pounds of food redirected from landfills to hungry New Yorkers. In Vermont, which has the most aggressive and expansive program, when they first rolled out their program, the first phase, food donations doubled. When they fully implemented their law, they saw them triple. So they've really seen a lot of food being redirected for people. There's also less waste. Vermont, currently, no one is allowed to throw food waste in a landfill. The enforcement isn't great, but they do have 71% of all food waste generated is being donated or recycled, which is huge. In Massachusetts, the most recent numbers we have are that over 700,000 tons of food waste were diverted in 2024 alone. These laws are also really strengthening compost systems. When these laws pass, there is increased emphasis on recycling. There's increased composting capacity, more hauling capacity. Maryland, after they passed their law, a lot of the existing composters doubled down on their capacity and started to expand because they knew the businesses would need to rely on them. In Vermont, they've seen a huge influx in the amount of businesses that are hauling food waste, making sure it can get from point A to point B so that it's recycled. They started out with 12 businesses that were hauling food waste. Before they passed their law, they're up to 45 now that it's fully implemented. And then finally, these laws have also had a huge economic benefit. Massachusetts has done 2 studies evaluating their program. A report came out a couple months ago focused on the most recent numbers, and they found that their program has created over 1,600 jobs. It's generated over 143 million in wages, and the overall economic benefit, when everything is kind of put together, is 390 million. So these laws have been incredibly impactful. And now I'm going to pass it back to Nora, who can go through the ins and outs of Maine's law.
Thanks, Peter, and hi again, everyone. Okay, once again, sharing screen. Why is share screen now not appearing? Do I have the power to share screen, administrator?
You should, yes. Usually it's right at the bottom.
It's the triple dot, right? Oh, no, never mind. Found it. Just kidding. Okay. Let's go. Okay. So, hi, everyone. So now that Peter has given that great context for the importance of food waste reduction laws, I'm going to go into the nuts and bolts of what Maine's food waste law requires. And I guess just as Peter referenced at some point that I would talk to what the campaign entailed, and I hadn't actually prepared so much to talk about that, but just briefly, I will talk about implementation challenges that we can expect in the actual implementation of this law, but just as a little context, Peter was the first one to come up with a version of this bill, and we met over the course of a couple of years with DEP to find a version that could go forward. And ultimately, DEP's biggest concerns, I think we all had the same aspirations. Ultimately, DEP's biggest concerns came down to staffing. And in the end, with the help of Stacey Brenner and Carla Hopkins, and many others, obviously, we found a way forward with the staffing concern with a version of the bill that we can hopefully build on as time goes on. And we will hopefully have a few minutes for Q&A and happy to answer any questions about that summary. But diving into what the bill requires, LD 1065 established Maine's first ever commercial food waste reduction and recycling law, and it focuses on large food waste generators that are near organics recycling facilities. So can kind of think about the law in terms of these 4 big pieces. It codifies a food waste management hierarchy. It will affect the biggest food waste generators. It does come with a stringent geographic limit, and it has 3 main phases, and I'm going to go into each piece of this. Oh dear, stop it. Okay. The law creates a food waste hierarchy that tracks closely with food waste hierarchies used in other states and also with our own solid waste management hierarchy, and basically says that the state must follow this order of priorities when implementing their food waste policies. And at the top is to reduce food waste at the source, donate excess edible food to food rescue organizations, like food banks, pantries, soup kitchens, then divert food waste for agricultural use, including for animal feed, then recycle remaining food waste via composting or anaerobic digestion, and land apply it, so use it for soil application. And then second to last, anaerobic digestion not followed by land application, so just used to create energy. And then lastly, landfilling or incineration. And I've crossed this one out because for the entities that will be affected by this law, that will not be an option. That is still at the bottom of the food waste hierarchy in general for how the state should implement its policies, but that will not be an option for the entities that will be affected by this law. So now let's talk about who's covered and when. Okay, so who cannot landfill food waste? So which entities are covered comes down to how much food waste do they create and how close are they to an organics recycling facility that can take that food waste. So once again, think about size and location. For size, the biggest food generators will be covered. Think food manufacturers, sub-major hotels, some major grocery stores, some major restaurants. But for all these sectors, it's important to understand that we're still talking about the minority of these entities being affected. Actually, the vast minority. And this law is just a starting point, and we hope that it lays the groundwork for further expansion down the road. The location piece, there is a radius limit, as Peter referenced, on who is affected by the law to make it, in this case, unequivocally achievable. But that limit can be expanded down the road as organics recycling infrastructure grows to meet the demand and as behavior changes. So the idea with this radius is that limit is that if someone said, hey, my hotel creates 5 tons of food waste a week, but we're 100 miles down a dirt road from the nearest organics recycling facility, we can't follow this law. Well, they wouldn't have to because of the radius limit. In practice, if you are making that much food waste, as the law will cover, you are likely within the radius of an organics recycling facility and not 100 miles up a dirt road. Moving to the timeline. So the timeline for implementation, it will have 3 big major rollout phases. Starting July 1st, 2030, if you are an entity that creates 2 tons or more of food waste a week, and you are situated within 20 miles of an organics recycling facility with capacity to take that waste, then you must follow the food waste hierarchy, and you can no longer landfill or incinerate your food waste. Starting 2 years later, if you are an entity that produces 1 ton or more a week of food waste, and you sit within 25 miles, so now that radius has gotten a little bit bigger, of an organics recycling facility with capacity to take that waste, then you cannot landfill or incinerate that waste. And then phase 3 is really important because it gives DEP the right, not the mandate, but the right to expand coverage through rulemaking down the road. And it says that in 2035, so almost a decade from now, when hopefully plenty of infrastructure and plenty of resources have been built up, DEP can lower the tonnage threshold and expand the radius. But importantly, there is a floor written into the law where they cannot lower the tonnage threshold to below 100 pounds a week, meaning they cannot apply the prohibition on landfilling food waste to anyone creating less than 100 pounds a week. And in practice, this means that households under this law will not be covered. So unlike in Vermont, residents will not be covered under this law unless there is new legislation in the future. And as I stated, at this point, in almost 10 years, in 9 years, DEP can also expand the radius. So perhaps they would say if you are 40 miles and you create half a ton, et cetera. So you can see that this rolls out slowly. And this is integral to the way these laws work. Peter has said before, we're talking about these laws, if you build it, they will come. And I think what we see is that when you lock in that business demand for organics recycling, then infrastructure starts sprouting up in a natural way, and behavior changes. So what else do we need to know about these laws? Reporting, lots of reporting and hardship waivers. So starting in March 1st, 2031, covered generators must report annually to DEP on the tons of edible food donated, the tons of food waste recycled, and any additional information that DEP requires. This reporting piece is obviously very key because it's how we know if people are complying with the law. It's how we know if the law is working. It's how we can build up resources to support expansion of the law down the road. And hardship waivers, this means that entities who can show that that complying with the law would cause them undue hardship can apply for temporary waivers, which will last up to 3 years. and that will be at the discretion of the department. Again, I want to underscore that this law is not the finish line, it's the foundation. The law grows with Maine's infrastructure, and it allows us to capture more food and support more hungry families and reduce more emissions over time. And it is hopefully a starting point. Okay, so lessons learned from all the other states that have been doing this, including the rest of New England. So there's been some good research, particularly by Harvard's Food Law and Policy Clinic, which created an organics waste ban toolkit, which is a lengthy document that I confess I have not read page by page. Perhaps Peter has, but it still has great info. And basically what they found certain attributes of these laws lead to success. One is clear phase scope and covered entities. So the effective bans will very clearly define who is covered. For example, large commercial generators, institutions, municipalities, and then what materials are prohibited from landfilling. So is the law just targeting food waste, or is it also targeting yard waste? In this case, in Maine, just food waste. And then when requirements take effect, often through phase thresholds based on tons generated or distance to processing facilities, which is what we have, must also be obviously very clearly explained. So states like Massachusetts and Vermont phased in requirements over several years, as Peter said, allowing markets and infrastructure to develop before widespread compliance was expected. And this matters because phasing builds compliance capacity and political durability. So infrastructure grows as demand grows, and it's important to expand the law's reach over time. As I said, only a small percent of each sector will be affected by these first phases that this law will create. So we are hopeful that future legislation might eventually one day build on what we have here. Another really important piece to these laws is technical assistance, education, and outreach. And I think this is, Mark King, I saw you're on the call, can speak a lot to this, more to this than I can, but successful bans or mandates, again, invest heavily in educating affected businesses and in sector-specific guidance. So what complying with this law looks like for a hospital is going to be different than for a college, is going to be different than for a huge grocery store. So really tailoring education and compliance support to each sector. And then on-the-ground technical assistance. And Harvard's Food Law and Policy Clinic's research did find that enforcement-only strategies are less effective than support-first approaches. So take that time and money and energy to really educate and support people in setting up these systems to comply. So expected implementation challenges for Maine's food waste ban. Again, we talked about all this during our many conversations with DEP and with our partner organizations, but limits on existing infrastructure is an expected challenge. Composting facilities, anaerobic digesters, haulers all play a major role in a generator's ability to comply. And Maine might expect early stage challenges as haulers and processors kind of adjust their operations. And then administrative burden. So for example, the hardship waivers that I mentioned, on the one hand, it gives some flexibility, which can set people's mind at ease, but on the other hand, it can glut the process for DEP, especially having to consider a lot of waivers. So, and then again, the clearer the rules and the fewer the exceptions, the more compliance. And of course, education takes time and money. So rolling it out slowly, letting infrastructure grow, letting behaviors change, normalizing this is key. And the success stories all show early investment, clear rules, and an education first enforcement approach to begin with. So we've made it to the questions. I wrote, we got answers probably. Peter and I are both available for questions. And yeah, are there any questions?
I saw there was one in the chat, which I did my best to answer written, but I can expound on it. So most of the laws don't require entities to actually weigh out how much food waste they're generating. That would be the ideal situation. It would be great if we could know exactly how much food waste every restaurant was creating to understand if they're covered or not. But that's not really practicable. So what most of the other laws have done is they create a formula that's trying to create a best case scenario for estimating how much food waste each type of entity creates. And I linked to New York's. So for instance, they break it down for a hospital, they're factoring that, there's around 1,983 pounds per employee per year. So then they figure out what's the minimum number of employees that a hospital would have to then reach our threshold. And they map that out. So then they can just have a quick, okay, if your hospital has 105 employees, you're covered by the law. So it's not a perfect system. It's definitely not giving us an accurate 100% that you're generating the amount of food waste, but it's the closest we can get without having to do that weighing at each location. So I hope that answered the question. And this came up a lot during the legislative process, trying to figure out the best way to calculate this. And in Maine, we're just leaving it to the DEP to figure out because they're the experts.
Right. We have another one that popped up from Vanessa. Do we have a sense of the impact this will have on tonnage?
Do you mean in terms of tonnage diverted?
Yeah, sorry. I have a Roomba situation happening in my living room right now. So, yeah, I was just curious about do we have like an estimated volume of food waste that will be reduced through this legislation based on kind of what we know right now in Maine?
I don't think we have a perfect number, Nora.
No, I think that will come through reporting and through this, getting off the ground. But we do have, based on a study that DEP commissioned on food loss and waste generation in the state, we do have a sense of what percentage of entities in each sector will be affected. And as I said, it's pretty small, but it's also hard to know how much that affects tonnage when it is the biggest producers, if that makes sense. So for example, by the time phase 2 is in place, it's estimated that only one, based on the study that was done, only 1% of restaurants will be affected by this. But if those restaurants are creating, 30% of the food waste in the restaurant industry, then that's going to be a different calculation. And I think ultimately, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, what we see is the food waste that residents are creating are the majority, if not integral to the problem, which is why we do hope that this is going to be a starting point for this policy.
Yeah, it definitely, I believe that report that you referred to found that, the majority of food waste generated in Maine, I think the report said there was around a little over 350,000 tons generated in Maine annually. Residences and the agricultural sector are the largest, with like somewhere around 60% of food waste. So agricultural will be covered to an extent. Residential, unfortunately, will not. That leaves about, 40% of the remaining being those commercial businesses that are going to be potentially covered by the law, either through those initial 2 phases or through the expansion by DEP. So it should have a pretty significant impact, both in those first 2 phases. But I think the real opportunity here is that the DEP can expand it over time without having to pass subsequent laws. That has been something that's been holding the other states back. Massachusetts program is one of the most successful. They've done it entirely through regulation. So they've been able to change who's covered when the Department of Environmental Protection feels that they're ready for it, rather than needing to go through this arduous process of trying to pass a new law. New Jersey passed one of the least impressive versions of these laws. It's just 2 tons, don't expand it, 25-mile radius. Because there isn't any shift, nothing's really happened. And for New Jersey to really capitalize on it, they've kind of plateaued. They need to pass a new law, which they've tried to do for 3 years, and it's not worked. So I'm rambling a bit now, but it will have a very big impact. But I think most of the impact is going to come through that expansion process that the DEP can do when we get down to those smaller and smaller generators.
All right, you just had another question pop up from Davis Saltonstall. Kind of just asking if you could speak to the location radius a bit more in detail. Are service areas considered, or is it a radius from a DEP licensed facility? Can entities send food waste to non-licensed facilities, etc.? And then will there be additional reporting requirements for organics facilities?
Nora, do you want to take this or I can?
If you know, if off the top of your head you can take it, I'm scanning the law to see how they define organics recycler. I don't see a licensing component, but if you know it, go for it.
I don't believe it has to be a DEP licensed facility, but it is generally understood that it is going to be a, permitted compost or anaerobic digestion facility. And the report that we've mentioned multiple times did have a really good map that showed where the existing composters and anaerobic digesters are, and had a radius around it so you could see what part of the state is covered. Entities can send food waste to farms, specifically under the requirement that they're allowed to send food to, as used as animal feed or for agricultural purposes. That is okay under the law. But for the radius requirement, we're just looking, I believe, when the law is implemented, at permitted compost or anaerobic digestion facilities. I don't believe there's any additional reporting requirements for organic facilities. There was in a previous version of the bill some reporting requirements, but that was taken out. I think we felt the reporting should come from the generators, not from the receiving entities. Nora, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think you got it. Organics recycler is defined in the bill as an agricultural operation, composting facility, anaerobic digestion facility, or in the law, excuse me, or any other facility that diverts food waste from incineration. And I don't see any language about it being licensed. But Peter was the author of many versions of this bill, so he also knows the weeds the best.
And, Nora mentioned multiple times this is by no means the solution entirely to food waste in Maine. It is a terrific starting point. I do think this law will have a huge impact. There's a lot that can be done to make this law more impactful. I think looking at kind of the licensing process and the permitting process for compost facilities and anaerobic digesters in the state, as we lead up to the implementation, would be huge, because the radius requirement is likely, I think, to be understood as those licensed facilities. It doesn't say it in the law, but that's how all the other states operate. New Hampshire and I believe New Jersey have kind of been working to rethink different tiers of composters to make it easier for smaller composters, for on-farm composters. Something that would really help this law thrive is trying to make it easier for folks to come in and do food waste recycling in Maine, which a lot of the burden is figuring out the permitting system.
Are there any other questions or concerns or comments out there? All right. I think, unless you either Nora or Peter have anything more to add, I think we might be good.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
so
Thank you
much.
for joining us today, to both of you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Of course, you too. And Nora had mentioned something earlier about the Maine food loss and waste generation study, and Vanessa did go ahead and put a link to that in the comments in case anyone's interested in seeing that. We will now we'll go to our next topic, which is talking about local success stories. Unfortunately, Cynthia Kirk from Skowhegan couldn't be with us today. And so we're hoping to maybe have her talk about their process of handling food waste at another time, because I know that they're doing some pretty cool things there. So I think we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Olivia Kunish from KV-COG talking about Reedfield.
Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Kunish. Like Jessica said, I'm the environmental coordinator at KV-COG. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see this okay? Good. Okay. All right. So this presentation is aimed to showcase how Reedfield launched and sustained a successful municipal composting program. I think it's a great model for other towns that are looking to reduce their waste and costs throughout composting, or just looking how to achieve an overall regional collaboration. So a little background about KV-COG, or Kennebec Valley Council of Governments. We are a regional planning organization. We serve the communities located in Kennebec, Somerset, and 8 Western Waldo counties. As the environmental coordinator, my services include recycling and reuse program assistant and outreach, composting program development, education on the school level and municipal level, household hazardous waste collection and disposal coordination, community outreach, and resources to encourage long-term environmental stewardship, and bulky waste recycling and disposal. So this is the setup at Reedfield's transfer station. I am not sure if you can see my mouse or not, but the top road is the entrance point where cars drive into the transfer station. The road on the left is just a private entrance, I'm pretty sure. I've never been down it, so I'm not actually sure where that road goes. But so you drive in from the top, and then on your left, when you're driving in, or on the right on the screen, you'll see the leaf and yard waste, compost area, brush area. And then it just all circles around to all the different buildings and drop-off stations for waste. The compost program, when it had started, it was in front of the maintenance garage. And then they ended up moving it away just to stay safe from any rats or any kind of rodents that they were having issues with. They just wanted them away from the building. So now it's over up in the top right circled compost area. So this program was made possible through a few collaborations with a few different entities. The Maine DEP provided the grant, and they also provided technical guidance once the grant was awarded. The Mitchell Center supported community engagement and connected Reedfield to other successful composting programs. And then MRA helped source the bins and also provided ongoing support with the program. These partnerships really highlighted the importance of leveraging state and nonprofit resources. So to go over how they kind of got it started, Reedfield received a $20,000 grant from the Maine DEP's Waste Diversion Grant back in 2021. The funding covered the bins, educational material, and infrastructure that was needed, like all of the compost containers and a wash station for the compost containers. Reedfield's main focus was they wanted to support both at-home composting and transfer station composting to really give residents flexibility to maximize participation. So they wanted to give the ability for residents to either use the transfer station year-round, or they could split it up, because Reedfield does have a lot of summer residents, so they really did want to give people an option that maybe didn't want to compost at home in the wintertime, an option to bring it to the transfer station as well, so that they were capturing organics year round. And then this is just a breakdown of how much each of the items cost through the grant that they got awarded from the DEP. Okay, so the program's goal was to reduce costs and the environmental impact of food waste. They really tried to emphasize education at every step, showing residents the environmental and economic advantage. The messaging was inclusive, promoting home and community composting equally. And then the program officially launched in the summer of 2021 and quickly gained some traction after that. So this is the compost area and signage. The sign they had paid for through the grant. It's a really beautiful sign, and I am sure that, a lot of residents probably aren't really reading the sign step by step, but I do think that the sign does bring a lot of attention to the compost area, if anything, so people are aware that it exists and is there, and that it's available to utilize. So this is the food scrap pile with the lobster trap wire bin. It's a pretty small operation, but it does work for them. And then on the left, you can kind of see it. It's a sawdust pile or sawdust shavings. I think that's what you would call it. And they use that to layer with the compost to help deter any smells, odors, keep pests out of the compost pile. There's a waste bin to deter trash being thrown in the compost. Not as much of an issue now, but it was at the beginning when they had originally launched the program. So this is their green compost pile where they add the food scraps from that lobster trap wire bin, and they put it in and then turn it. This is like what the finished product before they screen it, but it's the more aged pile of compost. And then this is their little screening area. They don't screen the compost for the residents, but they do have the screening area available if the residents want to screen it before they bring it back. I think up until recently, they have been giving the compost away for free to residents that want it. I think they have a limit on how much each person can take at once, but I know that they have been discussing charging for it, although I don't think that that's been implemented yet. All right, so some lessons that they learned from their composting program. They learned early that measuring and containerizing waste wasn't really practical for their site. I think it was pushed on them from the Mitchell Center that they wanted the tonnage of all the waste that they were diverting, but it just wasn't feasible for them being a small transfer station. They just didn't have the staff to keep up with that. The wash station that they had initially had when the compost station had started near the main building was really appreciated by staff. It was also really appreciated by residents because they could wash their buckets out, especially in the summertime when it gets hot and smelly. But then when they moved the pile away, there was no way for them to really move that wash station down. So they kind of had to do away with that. They would love for it to come back in the future though. Another lesson that they learned was that the temp was high enough for composting, but it wasn't really hot enough for pine cones, weed seeds to break those down completely. Contamination was also an issue from compostable plastics, but their pile, again, just wasn't really getting hot enough to break that down. It's still an issue. Their transfer station manager, Karen, does a really good job of going in and picking that stuff out. And they try to stay on top of it the best that they can. And they're always constantly seeking new sources of food scraps. and trying to maintain outreach to educate and let residents know that they have this available for them to use at their transfer station. The program has met its main goal, which is food waste is being diverted from the trash stream. Benefits include lower tipping and hauling costs, free compost for residents, and stronger community relationships. The staff are proud and invested in this program, which has really helped make the program sustainable long term. And even some other benefits like fewer smells coming from their solid waste compactor has been very appreciated from the staff as well. And it's just overall a success story of persistence and local collaboration. And where they want to expand this composting program moving forward is really with their schools. They would love to bring their schools on board with this, but they have not been able to yet. They have reached out to local administration and trying to get them on board, but just due to schools being understaffed and really being resistant to change, they haven't had success with this yet, but they would love to bring that in moving forward. And that is everything that I have. Thank you for listening. And if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer.
We had one come up in the chat from Catherine. She asked, oh, I must have some feedback. Okay. She asked if they've seen a reduction in the MSW tonnage.
I don't know if they have like hard numbers on that, but I would imagine yes, if they're noticing that the smell from the solid waste compactor is significantly decreasing. I would imagine that they're having less tonnage with that, but I don't think that they have the data for that, nor has that been shared with me. So I'm not sure I can answer that correctly.
Kate Tompkins from Chickadee Compost says, sorry if I missed it, but about how many households are participating, like the percent of the town population?
I know that the town population for Reedfield is, I want to say it's like right under 4,000. It's in that ballpark. And then they also have Fayette and Wayne, they share the transfer station with, and similar population size. I want to say Fayette's population is like 1,500 and Wayne's is in that 3,000 range. I know from the grant, they gave away about 100 at-home composting pails for to get residents on board with composting at home. But I don't think they have an actual number on how many are composting at home versus at the transfer station, like a solid number. But I know that they started out with 100 composting pills that they gave out to residents.
Okay. Let's see. Azalea says, I guess is agreeing that numbers would be huge, because her community might not be ambitious enough to take this on without knowing what others have saved by doing this. Is there any way we could get that kind of information to pass on, or?
I could definitely reach out and ask. Yeah, they might have it.
Okay. Sweet. Are there any other questions or comments for Olivia? All right. I guess hearing and seeing none, we will move right along. Thank you, Olivia, for your presentation and for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. We will now hear from Julie Rosenbach from South Portland about what they have going on down there. Are you on? Were you able to join us, Julie?
I am here, yes.
Lovely. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
Hmm. There we go. Um, all right. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. Bear with me here. I just realized that I can't see my presenter's notes. Okay, so I'm gonna wing it, you guys. That's okay. So here's what hi everybody. Thank you. I'm Julie Rosenbach. I am the how do I go back? Okay. Hi everybody. Thanks for bearing with me on this snow day. I'm Julie Rosenbach. I'm the Sustainability Director for the City of South Portland. And we have had some type of food waste program for several years now. And so I'm just going to take you through why we decided to focus on food waste, although I'm sure that people know that, and we've already touched on that, but it really informed our program, how we started with the pilot and what our current food waste program is. So, you know, as many of you know, I don't have more updated numbers. I'm not sure we're going to get more updated numbers for a while, but food waste is one of the largest components of our MSW, our municipal solid waste stream, that we can pull out. Not only is it important to pull it out because there's a higher and better use for it, but we send our trash to EcoMaine to be incinerated, and putting food waste in there, you know, it makes the whole process a lot less efficient, as well as having higher and best use. So according to EPA, food waste is about 22%, almost a third of all MSW. There was also a waste characterization study that was done a lot earlier, but I feel like the data still holds true for the most part. That was done specifically for Portland, Maine, and it gave a much higher percentage of total waste. So that set the stage for us understanding that there is a real opportunity here. There was also the National Resources Defense Council did another study in 2017, and it said, and this was a bit surprising, but for each city, they focused on Denver, Nashville, and New York. The residential sector was the top generator, or tied with restaurants for the top for food waste. So it's not just like the large grocery stores and restaurants. The residential sector really is up there. The other important thing that this survey told us is that 76%, so 3/4 of people believe they throw out less food than the average American. And this is important because community-based social marketing tells us that as long as people think that they're doing as well or in line with their neighbors, they're not going to take action. And so with this belief, I think it really, people feel like, well, I'm sort of like doing what everyone else is doing. And so there's an opportunity to change things on that end. 70% that believe that changing their behavior would reduce would reduce food waste in their home, little or not at all. So behavior change wouldn't change the amount of food waste that's coming out of their home, and that they throw away, less than the average American. And here's the third statistic that really got to us, is that almost 60% feel less guilty about wasting food if it's composted. So all of these three things together tell us that, there's not a lot of behavior change or indicators that people believe will reduce the amount of food waste that they're generating. But on the back end, if they have an avenue for compost or anaerobic digestion, then they're likely to take that option. And so it's a huge opportunity here to really talk to people about what's possible. So with all that in mind, in 2016, we set out to do a pilot program for curbside food waste collection, free curbside food waste collection. We did 2 neighborhoods in South Portland. It was a little over 600 households. And we gave them all, the 5-gallon buckets with lids like Garbage to Garden uses. And we gave them free curbside food waste collection for about a year. So from May to June. The program, and we said, hey, we're just testing this program out. Go ahead and put your food waste in your bucket and put it out with your weekly trash and recycling, and we'll pick it up for free. Well, another town in Maine they were doing a pilot program, and they were doing like every other week trash and recycling so that they could accommodate this. Well, they got a lot of angry phone calls and they had to stop their program. People wouldn't accept every other week trash and recycling. Meanwhile, on our pilot program, people were so psyched. They said, I heard about the pilot. How can I opt in? Is there a way that you can come pick up from me? And so we didn't change our pilot program, but what we did instead was we put 65-gallon bins at the transfer station so that if people wanted an avenue to send their food for anaerobic digestion, they could. So here's how successful our pilot program. It was really, really a successful program. The average weekly set out rate was about 37%. So that means any given week, 37% of the buckets were put out, which doesn't sound that successful, but it really is successful because the average household doesn't generate maybe a full bucket every week. The food waste that we diverted curbside was 48 tons, and then far less, but still people drove to the transfer station and dropped off 8 tons at the transfer station outside of the food waste pilot program. So our food waste diversion rate was 9% of total waste, and it brought our recycling rate up in that neighborhood for that time period a significant amount. And so it was really successful. But we couldn't do this free pilot program for forever. It ended after the year, and then we had to think about what to do. And the real challenge was, how do we deal with collection costs? Because South Portland has already automated system that we contract out to Casella, and they have a split body truck, and they pick up our trash and recycling in one drive time. So we're trying to figure out what to do, and what we settled on. Oh, I forgot. How could I forget? How could I forget to talk about the role of education and outreach? I feel like that is what made this pilot so successful. We had really clear materials that we worked on with both of our partners, which were Garbage to Garden, and then of course we take all of our food waste to EcoMaine as our partner facility, and then we also partnered with Hannaford because what we wanted to do was to enable bringing our food waste to EcoMaine. They already had a contract to send all the food waste for anaerobic digestion, and they have a depackaging machine. And the reason why they did that was to encourage people to compost, to separate out their food waste and get rid of the ick factor. So they said, you can put it in plastic bags, we'll debag it, and we'll get the organic materials. Well, we partnered with Hannaford. We had a tabling day where we gave out free bins, and we were encouraging people to reuse the bags that their produce comes in, to put their food waste in that and throw that in the bin, so that they're not, using brand new bags. And it was really successful. And a lot of people with such clear outreach have really taken to the program. So with that in mind, here's our current program. What people were like, we love this, we want more of this, is that we set up 5 curbside food waste drop-off sites around the city. But we wanted a program that people could use they could be incentivized to use in a couple of different ways. And so the first way was, well, there's pluses and minuses. In the first way, there's we give anybody who wants it a free countertop 1-gallon bin and a free 12-gallon bin that you see at the top of the screen. Anyone can pick that up that's a resident of the city to use to separate out their food waste. If they want to do this program completely free of charge, then they can use those buckets and they can bring it to one of our 5 drop-off sites. We located our drop-off sites along busy corridors so that they're advertisements in and of themselves. So if somebody forgets on Monday, they can bring it on Tuesday. If they forget on Tuesday, they can bring it on Wednesday. That they're not out of the way sites, although we do still have a site at the transfer station. So people can do the program entirely for free by bringing their food waste in one of those bins. They can bag it, they can drop it off. Or if they do want curbside collection, we worked with Garbage to Garden and we negotiated a reduced rate from their private service. So if people use a city bin, they get curbside service with their trash and recycling for $12 a month. And so some people take advantage of that as well, but they don't clean out the bin. So that's our current program. We are switching from taking it to EcoMain for anaerobic digestion to just having Garbage to Garden take the food waste to their farm for processing into compost. And so we're in April, we're going to be rolling out no longer no use of plastic bags, no use of plastic at all, and just dump your food waste in the bins for free. So that's our current program. Here's why I'm bummed that I can't see my notes, because I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm going to wing it because I think in fiscal year 25, this past year, we generated about 5,000, a little over 5,700 tons of municipal solid waste. And we collected about 890 tons of food waste. Don't quote me on those numbers, but it's somewhere around there. So what we're gathering right now in our program, and the bins, this is a success program. It's a success and more to grow on, because our 5 sites are consistently used to the max. We've had to add more bins at every single site. So people are looking for this. They really want this, but the food waste that we've collected is about 6% of our municipal solid waste. So we know that food waste could be up to, a quarter of our solid waste. And so we have a long way to go, and we have a huge opportunity to build on this program. In my mind, the logical next place to go is figuring out curbside food waste collection for the whole city. So that's what we're trying to think about and work on now. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Julie, for being with us today. Does anyone have, here's a question in the chat from Kate Tompkins at Chickadee Compost. She asks, is the city paying tipping fee to Garbage to Garden for the drop-off sites? And do you have access to finished compost for your residents?
Great question. Who asked it?
Kate Tompkins from Chickadee Compost.
All right, so I have a question, but we pay one fee for them to collect it. The tipping fee is wrapped into the collection fee. And so the rate we've negotiated is, a rate that now accommodates them taking the food waste to their compost facility and not paying a tipping fee at EcoMaine. But so, as we look at doing curbside food waste, we're going to have to figure out what we're really aiming for, and it's going to be a challenge right now these days, is introducing pay-as-you-throw for municipal solid waste. South Portland, is it's interesting that we don't have a pay-as-you-throw system, but we don't. And so we would like to introduce that type of program to help offset the cost of free curbside food waste service for everybody. And so that is what we're going to be proposing to our council at some point in 2026 or early 27.
Were there any other questions for Julie? All right, seeing none. Julie, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or?
No. Well, yes, I do. I have one last thing to add. This is really a pet project of mine because people are really interested in seeing their food waste go to better use. And I think all across the board. And it's not just like the typical enviros. We have a lot of people in the city who are like, oh, I've been here so long. I remember when the local pig farmer would collect our food scrap. So it's an across the board program. It's got a great outcome. And so I think this is the way things are going. We just need to figure out how to collect it more cost effectively. So I'm glad that you're having this whole webinar today. Thanks.
Thank you for
Awesome.
taking this on, Julie. This is amazing stuff.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, does
Sure, yeah.
anyone have any like last call, I guess? Any last questions, comments that you'd like to say before we kind of wrap things up a bit? All right. I think we're good. Thank you again, Julie, for being here with us today. And thank you everyone who joined in support of this webinar. We hope to do more things like this to kind of help raise awareness and things. We did want to take just an opportunity to kind of share out something that we have recently started doing. MRA has created a student scholarship fund that helps support college students, university students, and possibly high school students to come to our events and learn more about the industry, to maybe generate interest for future generations to continue this work in reducing waste and recycling and managing solid waste. So we came up with this scholarship fund. It's called the Jerry T. Hughes WasteWise Fund. And Jerry was up in Bangor at the transfer station there. And he was a member of the board of MRA a while back. And he always thought that education and training was very important to keep things going. So we created this fund, and we have sponsorships available, or if you'd like to donate a smaller sum to help support the future generations in this industry, that would be great. This information can also be found on our website. And I think that was all I had to say about that. So thank you everyone again for joining us here today. We did record this, so we will be sending out the recording to all who attended, as well as everyone who registered but maybe couldn't attend today. So this will be going out, and if I have permission from the speakers, we will also post or send out presentations as well, just so that you can access that information. And I think that might be it. Anyone have any last minute questions, comments, concerns? All right. I guess not. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Stay safe and warm out there. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good one.